Of the Mobile City Planning Commission, I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or a group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any. Members of the public make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience. And please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. Thank you. After hearing all applications, the commission will go into a deliberation session. In the deliberation session, the commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application. Results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or to call the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean that the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, planned unit developments. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decision. At this time, please turn off your cell phone. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. I'm going to call roll. I'm Libba Latham. Shirley Sessions. Here. Alan Cameron. Here. Matt Anderson. Here. Nick Amberger.
Here.
Bess Rich.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Mrs. Chairman, Madam Chairman, before you start, I'd like to introduce 2 guests I have with me today. I have 2 summer law clerks sitting here behind me, Emma Goodlow and Tyler Flowers. Emma's a graduate of UMS Wright and University of Georgia. Tyler went to McGill and University of Alabama, and they're both rising 3rd-year law students at Cumberland in Birmingham. And I just wanted to bring them down and show how we do things.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Welcome to our meeting. I hope you find it interesting and informative. We have a fairly slim agenda today. Sometimes we go for a really long time, and the people are just exhausted by what's going on, and sometimes we're in and out in a flash. So hopefully we'll be somewhere in the middle today. Welcome and good luck with your summer internship. Okay, I need a motion to adopt today's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to start with number 1, 7400 6th Street West. That is a planning approval application, which has been recommended for denial of that request. Is the applicant present? Is there anyone here who would like to speak either in favor of this application or against it?
Ms. Latham, I did want to draw to the Commission's attention, we did receive an email from an area resident, Mr. Henry Lee Pugh, in opposition, and you should have a copy at your...
Thank you, Ms. Beth. Okay, we will move on to number 2. 2820 Spring Hill Avenue, Burton Subdivision. It is a subdivision application as well as a zoning change application. Is the applicant present? And you're in agreement with all the recommendations? He has indicated such agreement. Would you like to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Thank you very much. We'll move on to number 3. Number 3 is 5451 Halls Mill Road, a subdivision application which has been recommended for tentative approval, as well as a PUD application which has been recommended for approval. The applicant present and in agreement? Agreement has been indicated. Is there anyone in here to speak in favor of it? Yes, sir. Please state your name for our records.
Thank you, Libba. Kenny Nichols, 2600 Dolphin Street here in Mobile. Just want to clarify one item on the staff report in regard to, number 1, the relocation of the interior lot lines. It appears there was some misinformation on the application related to whether or not this was going to be a leased parcel. The parcel is actually going to be purchased fee simple, and we are purchasing, the applicant is purchasing additional right of or property from the shopping center in order to develop a double drive-through. And so we're going to enter into a separate agreement with the property owner to allow for some excess parking. So there's not going to be any parking that's leased per se. The property is not going to be leased, and Lot 2 is going to be purchased outright. So I guess our only comment on the staff report would be to reconsider item number 1, as shifting around the property line would constitute a burden on what we are contractually obligated to perform.
So, Mr. Nichols, the lot lines, because that property is being purchased, do not need to be relocated?
That is correct.
Okay. So what you're really asking is for us to strike number 1?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
So the parking spaces that we have outlined in that little red area there are not being leased from the shopping center?
No, there's just going to be a separate agreement as to their use. It's essentially going to function as, overflow and really employee parking, so that the employees will use the shared parking in the shopping center, and then the customers will park closer to the building.
But you will not be leasing that?
No, there's no
center area.
consideration, there's no monetary consideration for use of those parking spaces, no.
If those parking spaces are not being leased from the shopping center, then staff is okay with doing away with that condition.
Thank you. That was my next question. You anticipated it. Thank you.
Okay. But Libby,
Anything else?
That's our only comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nichols. Anybody else like to make any comments on this one? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Thank you very much. We will move on to number 4, which is 6101 and 6301 Greylock Road and 1401 Hillcrest Road. Subdivision application which has been recommended for tentative approval. A planned unit development which has been recommended for approval. Applicant present? The applicant is present? Or would you like to come down and speak?
My name is Merrill Thomas. I live at 6 Drury Lane in Mobile. The staff report has 2 items. One is parking, the location of our parking, and the other is site coverage, building site coverage. As to the parking, our parking is on the north side of the drive aisle. This property is not city property. It's not a public street. It's an access easement across the front of this property, very similar to what you would have in a shopping center, where you might have a fast food on one corner of the property and another fast food on the other, and you have a drive aisle between the two. It creates a hardship on us if we have to relocate those parking places, because then you'd have to reduce your building size, which creates a number of issues. We would, and then also you got CVS right next door that has parking on the north side of the drive aisle.
So it's just the parking spaces on the north side of Lot 2 that you're concerned about?
Yes, I'm dealing with Lot 2 only, and that is our parking. We have one parking place for handicap that is just below it, and then the area that is behind that handicap is a drive aisle that will allow you to bring your merchandise or your furniture or whatever and, load and unload there and then drive off.
Ms. Pappas? Oh, excuse me, is there anybody else here just with any questions or?
I have some questions, but I'll listen to staff
Pappas.
first on this.
Staff's going to punt. Basically, because there is no office here, this is strictly storage. There are no minimum parking requirements for this facility.
Okay.
However, this is where we hand off to to the traffic engineering as the concern regarding these parking spaces were part of their comments.
The comments did originate from traffic engineering with our concern about them backing in, and Mr. Merrill Thomas is correct. It is not a public road. It is a joint access easement across the property. But that being the case, it's gonna act like a service road, and that was our concern with the backing into the road. And also the chance that people are gonna be parking over there and walking things across what looks like a very minor street, over to the storage area. So it was a concern about just the general safety around that. I believe the parking is not required, but if there's a better suited place, even if there's less spaces, I think we can come to terms with some kind of arrangement if the commission would allow some lenience in the parking and where they're showing it, and then that it could change with staff's approval, if that was something y'all would allow. Maybe they don't relocate it to the south, but maybe we can consider some other arrangement somehow. I'm not sure. Maybe it's parallel parking on the property side or something, some kind of other arrangement. That's where our concerns came from.
And do you have the same concerns about the parking that's along the north side in front of the CVS?
Not so much, because it's not really a thoroughfare. You've arrived in a parking lot, so you expect the cars. Unless the road continues or there's more parking that's developed on both sides, you keep thinking that you're in a parking lot and you expect cars to be backing in on you. How it's developed at the moment, how it's proposed, with the exception of these few spaces, it looks like a service road. So, I mean, it's not a very good example, but Dolphin Street around Springdale and that general area where the gas station is at the end of the corridor, you've arrived in the gas station, you're there. But think if that little strip that has the coffee shop in it now had parking on the other side of the street. I mean, it's kind of something like that. A little different because that's public road, but that's generally what we're looking at here. So.
Okay.
And you'll notice there's not going to be much traffic at all, because CVS has two curb cuts, one in Hillcrest and one into Greylock. So it's not like the access from Greylock comes from down near the church, and drives all the way across. So it's minimal. And the process, the customer is not going to carry sofas across the street. That primarily would be a parking area for employees, or if there's a laborer that's helping somebody unload, they may park there. It'd be rarely used. We're not going to we don't plan to have an office in this building, because we have another storage facility on the other corner down the street, and we'll use our office facility there. So it'll be barely used at all. But it's the kind of thing, if one day we sell it, somebody else is going to need an office in there, and they're going to need parking, and it's just, I think, good planning on our part to allow for parking.
You wanted the, even though you weren't required to have the parking, you wanted the parking?
I want the parking.
Okay.
To make that kind of an investment and not have any parking is risky.
On this private road that's shown there, unfortunately, a lot of people, when Greylock and Hillcrest back up, mostly because Starbucks goes out into the street, and so people know if they're, need to go straight or want to get on Greylock, they're actually using that. I've seen that activity a lot because it allows you to move and come out to Greylock and to bypass the intersection there. So I think that in certain times of day, there's, as more and more people know that they can go through the CVS parking lot, and that does look like a parking lot. That portion of it is definitely a parking lot, but they go right out there. I guess I have the question also about what kind of building materials for the frontage. It's not so much what cannot be seen from Greylock, but my phone rang knowing that it's a storage unit. They didn't know whether it was the type that had all the additional ones, like the one across the street where you have the separate buildings, because I didn't see any of these plans till just now. Right,
one
I get
building,
that.
and
that.
it'll be a combination of stucco brick. I mean, that's an issue that we can deal with. I mean, that's...
Okay, and that might need, the commission might want to think about something along the criterias, because it's a PUD, and also, do you have the idea of the type signage you would be putting out?
We would have a pylon of some description.
Because it kind of sits up, and so getting a pylon would...
Well, when I say a pylon, monument.
Monument would be very nice, as a matter of fact, because of the residential character of the area. I know it's got a lot of commercialization, and this is zoned appropriately, but since it's a PUD, try to get some mitigation as far as how it blends in with the surrounding, which is a lot of residential.
Right,
It's real
and we
important.
want it to be nice. Our properties are
Yeah.
attractive.
Well, there's a new storage unit that actually came on where there used to be the daycare on Hillcrest, and when you drive past that, it looks really nice because it's bricked and it just looks like it fits in. So that would be something to consider. As far as the parking, the staff talked about the size of the building and recommends that it gets smaller. So can we hear the philosophy on that?
The property is zoned B3. The maximum site coverage allowed by right in B3 is 50%. However, the square footage of the building, the site coverage is 51.8. PUDs can alter the site coverage. It's frequently done with residential to allow the additional 1.8%. Then engineering would, of course, require that additional site coverage to be accounted for in their stormwater plan.
If we were to consider asking them to reduce the square footage of the building, would that create enough room for the parking that appears to be problematic? And I don't want to go down that path.
I haven't crunched the numbers. I'm not sure that 1.8% reduction's going to yield 7 parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
And this
It
building,
requires 7 by...
None are required because there is no office in here. The parking that they are providing is because they choose to do so.
and the size of this building is a prototypical size that we've built before. And if you reduce it, you'd have to reduce it by 12 or 15 feet. And by doing that, when you have a 10 by 20 unit and you have a 5-foot hallway, all of a sudden now it's a 7-foot. I mean, you just waste, and you know.
I understand. I just was asking that
Yeah.
question.
It's a good question. And that L-shaped that's basically where people will drive up to bring the big couch. 'Cause
That's right.
They can't walk it across the street.
That's right.
So you anticipate that.
Yes. And typically, as I say, our customers don't park over there. Maybe a laborer who's helping somebody unload may park over there, just to keep it open.
Your little L-shaped area, that'll be a paved,
Oh, yes.
concreted
Oh, yeah.
surface. so
Yeah,
that-
it'll all
so-
be paved,
so-
and the handicap is in that little island that you see, which is landscaped.
Yeah, so more than likely, somebody coming there, I mean, unless it's just completely crowded, they're gonna probably park on that side of the building. There probably won't be anybody parking on the north side of the service road where you're proposing.
Typically,
parking.
they've got merchandise or whatever,
Sure,
furniture, and they just pull in to the front door.
Yeah, unless you're packed, though, you probably won't have
And
people
typically,
use-
you don't have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
You might have 2 people, 3, at most 3,
I
and
think
you
we're
would
trying
just
to
stack.
wrap our hands around a little bit more why you want to build the parking. Most of the time, people don't want to build the parking.
I understand.
And the parking, I think the challenge is that everybody sees with the parking on that north side is the service road does look like a road. It doesn't look like a parking lot. Whereas when you get to the CDS, it might be the same width and it's performing the same function, but it's clearly a parking lot. And so because you've only got a handful of spaces there and it's not the full frontage, it feels like a road. I mean, I think that's probably what we're scratching our heads on a little bit. But
Well, we don't want to build 15 parking places, but we can. If that makes you.
well, I know, but I'm saying that's what's,
Solves the
that's
problem.
what's
Yeah, I
kind of
understand.
really
I
puzzling
understand,
to
and
us.
I see that.
And a lot of storage units, they have gates, and then the people that are clients or visitors have a code. Do you anticipate doing that?
We're not going to have a gate, but we will have codes, and we will have video surveillance that will be be at our other main office down the street.
I wonder how they could make it look like it is a parking. Because the street's not changing sides, you're gonna add to this, correct? Are you taking it from the road
No.
that's there? You're gonna bump it out, right?
Right.
Okay. If it's like landscaped, like something, or that's where the monument sign, something that alarms people to not fly through that as they're trying to cut off the intersection, because that's how that's used, seriously. And I don't see that in the very near future getting better.
I guess your thoughts, the hypothetical could be if the building did sell and somebody reconfigured it, maybe they might make parking along the full frontage there.
We've not operated a building that didn't have an on-site manager.
Sure.
And in this particular case, we've got a manager that's a block away.
Right.
And having video, and they have, some of these facilities are totally code, punch code to get in and pay your bills and everything, so.
But you want the parking.
We're gonna
right?
try it.
But you want the parking, I guess that's gonna be my
We
final
want
question.
it, yeah,
Okay.
I really.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
If,
Would you be,
Are we talking about also the car wash? Is somebody there to represent what, and I guess this is two separate applications, it's a PUD, no, it's together.
With 2 different developments.
But it's one PUD before us, yes. So the application is the same.
Merrill, how many cars can be in that circle area at one time? 3?
Probably 3, maybe 4. It just depends on, I would think certainly 4.
it would depend on how they park.
We don't typically have a rush, for, Saturdays maybe, you might have 2 or 3 people that are there at the same time.
Could there be parking along the side there?
There's not room,
No room?
Mm-mm.
So-
and we need landscaping.
I think the island, your little handicap island, I think that will help to break it up. Where there's parking on the north side and then the island, that will kind of break it up. And I mean, I guess in hindsight, I can see you going and you're moving some stuff out. You get a couple of college kids to come help you. They both show up in cars and you've got a truck. So I mean, I think I get it. I understand the need for it now.
Right.
And Mr. Thomas, would you be agreeable to working with traffic to make it a more appropriate parking spaces, other than just the
We have
street?
to make it part of the
We'd be
PUD.
glad to work with, you know.
That
Ms.
was,
Manaply.
that was the suggestion. All right, do you have any further comments?
Well, just the size, we would like to use our prototypical size, which is 1.8% larger than the coverage, which is, I don't know, maybe it's 1,600 square feet on a 48,000 square foot building.
Yeah, we
which
could
is-
get more landscape in the front, that would be good, and as a trade-off. just
That's fine.
saying.
We're good with landscape. We
I think-
like landscape.
I don't, you know, like I said, I know it's zoned appropriately for the application, but just trying to make it fit in as best we can.
If there's, in fact, the church has asked that we either put a wooden privacy fence between the two properties, or build, or plant some, you know,
Greenery.
20-foot tall trees, bushes of some description as a buffer. So,
And you've agreed to do that?
excuse me?
And you've agreed to do something along those
Oh,
lines?
well, yes, we're going to satisfy whatever the church wants, and we want to,
They want a fence between the storage and the car wash?
yes, visual, you know, to improve it. And quite honestly, I know it'll be a clean car wash, but I think that we're going to have a good, attractive buffer between the two buildings.
Well, I have one stormwater comment for you. I see where you're doing a stormwater detention area that's common for all of Lot 1. I don't know how you're dealing with stormwater for Lots 2 and 3, but if you've got any joint arrangement with stormwater, you know, on one of the other facilities, we've dealt with the stormwater issue, so make sure y'all have an ironclad maintenance agreement of who maintains what.
Right, and you're very familiar with our
Yeah.
stormwater
Yeah,
issues. that
well,
we-
and know that this.
Upstream.
This site, any water that leaves this site drains through or past that other one. So you need to make sure this
Right.
facility has, whoever's responsible for maintaining it, does. I mean, at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And then it's sized appropriately and all that, because it's,
Absolutely.
I guess if we're looking at this, it says exclusive stormwater detention basement easement for Lot 1, but you're gonna be Lots 2 and Lots 3.
two
So
and
y'all
For the
y'all
PUD.
accommodated, where is the stormwater being accommodated?
Well, we've got some in the front and then down on the side.
Okay.
It runs the side, but it will
Just gotta make sure your engineer,
Absolutely.
handles that very, very appropriately. I would probably also encourage them to even size it larger than the minimum. Anytime we have a known downstream issue, we always make the engineers increase the size of the pond and slow up the release rate, because it helps folks. Again, you're helping yourself because you happen to be the downstream guy.
I know.
So, very important that they do that.
Right.
Any further questions or comments from the commission? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this? Thank
What
you,
about
Mr.
the car,
Thomas.
can we just hear about the car wash? You know, what they envision and type signage? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, the car wash is going to be a nice car wash, and we're going to have nice signage. I mean, it will be something that will, Steve Campbell, 7021 Charleston Oaks, Mobile. It'll look good for the community. It's one that we'll put, we're going to put, the right kind of signage up to be appropriate for the neighborhood, and the right kind of landscaping. So, we've got plans to make sure that it's a very positive part of the community.
What are your hours of operation?
We're going to be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
What days of the week?
Every day but Sunday.
So you will be closed on Sunday?
So-
Yes.
So Monday through Saturday,
Yes.
7 to 7.
Any other questions?
Do you have any idea of the noise level of the vacuum system? How is that gonna?
Yeah, it won't be bad. I mean, they're not real loud. I mean, I think there's technology, and they spend money to make sure that they keep the noise level down, because they are, as we move forward, car washes are moving, there are more of them popping up, and that's one of the things that the technology, the money's being spent on that technology to keep the noise down.
And enforcement of the noise level coming from the cars?
Yeah, we'll make sure that, and that's why we're going to put buffers up between us and the adjoining properties, and we have talked to the church about making sure that, that there's landscaping to help block the noise between there and the church. But we'll have people on site, we'll have cameras there to monitor everything, to make sure that everything stays noise appropriate and appropriate for that part of the community.
Thank you.
How many vacuum stations do you anticipate?
24.
24?
Yep.
And each one has its own parking space, is that what I'm looking at?
Yes, ma'am.
Where do the people that work there park?
It'll be beside the bay. I don't know if that's the north or the south, but the side that is closest to the church, behind that bay, there'll be parking spots there.
How many do you anticipate needing?
3, possibly. I think 3 are. You see just this side of the car wash.
Where that straight line is your
Yes, ma'am.
parking spaces?
Yep.
Okay. And so they come in number 3, where you say lot 3, this is where they come in?
Yep, they're going to come in, go straight through they're going to go through the vacuuming deals, and then follow that, where that red dot, keep coming down past that line, circle back, and then enter from Greylock. So they're going to enter, yep.
Oh, I see what
They'll
you're doing.
enter through Greylock, and then circle back through the vacuums to exit to Greylock.
Okay, so they go behind the vacuum parking space? Or they come back again the way they came in? So that's a two-way drive there.
Yeah, it'll be a two-way drive. There'll be traffic going, both directions.
And people backing out? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's room there for that.
What kind of signage were you thinking about?
I don't know how to describe it, but it's I don't know if you've seen the competitors in the area. It'll be similar to what is commonplace for your nicer car washes.
What does this law allow on a B3?
They're allowed one freestanding sign. The size of it is based on their street frontage. It's 1 to 1 square foot per linear foot of frontage. They would be allowed by right one freestanding, and that could be either a pylon sign or a monument style sign.
Better to do a monument.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Hammond.
much.
Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Thank y'all very much. We will move on to number 5, which is the west side of Providence Park and 800 feet plus or minus on the south side of Airport Boulevard. It's a subdivision application as well as a planned unit develop application. The subdivision has been recommended for tentative approval, as has the planned unit development. Is the applicant present? Okay.
guess I have some questions.
Excuse me, just a minute, Ms. Rich. I
have
need to
some-
recuse on this one. I am very sorry, Mr. Latta, about that. Without me being able to vote, we do not have a quorum.
We don't have a quorum without you, so it has to be held over.
Okay.
I am very sorry about that. I was not aware this was on today's agenda. My apologies. This application will have to be held over to our June 17th meeting. Thank you so much. Would you like to go ahead and speak since you're here?
I did.
Well, come on down and introduce yourself and give your address for the record, please. And then, Mr. Amberger, would you take over for me, please?
Sure.
William Latta, 3901 Spring Hill Avenue.
I see in the application it mentions medical, but it's zoning in the B3. So as far as needing a PUD, normally if it was all individual medical offices like most of the surrounding area, that wouldn't be an issue. But is there going to be any kind of signage by the front of this?
So we do not have any design plans yet.
I see.
This is purely being done to subdivide the lots so they can sell 2 of the lots. Those sites are in very preliminary stages
I see.
of design, and so I couldn't really speak to what or how many
Yeah.
signs.
Okay.
Would be there.
At one time, when this plan unit development came up for the hospital and everything was related to medical or quasi-medical, there was a desire to see monument signs for all the buildings and everything. So I don't know whether this needs to be the opportunity when we come back. And if you have any more information on the 17th, that would be great. But this is where I'm thinking about this in general. And I think it's Ascension property now, so it's a whole different mindset too, perhaps. And okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Of course.
I've got a question for the applicant. How are you planning to accommodate the retention for any of this? Or does it does look like there's an existing pond that may have been in a larger parcel. Do we know, was that the retention pond for the entire site, or?
So we believe that that pond has enough capacity for the entire site. That being said, the initial plan is to utilize it for the detention for the cul-de-sac, to require that the buyers of the lots implement their own detention on their site, knowing that we believe the pond has adequate capacity for those sites if needed.
I think the appropriate research needs to be done, possibly with the staff, to see if that's what that pond was originally intended for. When you put in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots that are relatively small in nature, retention ponds are going to be, they're going to be challenging to get in there by the time they put a building on them. So I definitely think you need to do some research and see that. It would be wonderful if it turned out that pond did have the capacity or was sized to accommodate any future developing of those lots. That would be a great thing for y'all to find out if that was in fact the case.
I'd say my initial research into it indicates that it is. I have not looked into the exact numbers and run the specific calculations for each lot specifically, but the general notes I've seen on as-built and the previous master plans indicates that
And just
it
another
is.
generalization comment, that property looks to have a tremendous amount of topography on it, with one large draw going down one side of it and then another little branch there. So, maybe it's, I don't know if you can put that up, Margaret, the one that depicts the topography lines. No, not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Nope. It might just be in our books. Our books have the environmental
Yeah.
locator. I'll hold it up and show. It's
Got a
this
good
one with all the
photograph of
lines
it.
on it. I just think you need to look at that real hard, because it would indicate that all of these lots would have to have a significant amount of fill or a significant amount of drainage to accommodate?
Yeah, so I've got some initial topographic surveys for a couple of the lots that show to the west. Yeah, there is some fall there in the rear of the lots. There's also a couple of drainage swales and ditches that lead back to the pond for some of the other lots that surround this development.
It would appear some of your lots have 10 or 15 feet of fall across them.
That's
So
correct.
Very significant amount of.
That's correct.
Fill. Okay, I just want to make sure you were aware of that.
I have one more question, if I
Yes,
may.
ma'am.
Unless I heard wrong, you said that there were 2 lots that had some activity other than perspective, except for the other 5. Can you tell us something about what that might become?
So there's a buyer for lots 6 and 7. Lot 6, potentially lot 7. Like I said, that buyer is still in very conceptual phases to see what he can put back there with respect to the topography issues.
But it's medical related?
That's correct.
As your application stated?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions by commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amberger.
Thank you.
We will hear that on June 17th, so if you'd like to come back, Mr. Lattier, please do. Okay. That, before I call it, let me make sure that's our last item on our agenda. It is. We will now move into the deliberation phase. We're going to start with number 1, 7400 6th Street West.
Move to deny.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of denying that application?
Aye.
Aye. That application is denied. Number 2, 2820 Spring Hill Avenue. That has been recommended for tentative approval.
So moved.
Second.
We have a subdivision application and a zoning application on this. Let's take the subdivision first. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, do you want your motion to apply just to the subdivision?
That'll be fine.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the subdivision application?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. The second part of that is a zoning request, rezoning it from B2 neighborhood business and B3 community business to all B3 community business. I'll entertain a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of that rezoning?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Let's move on to number 3, 5451 Halls Mill Road. The subdivision portion has been recommended for tentative approval.
Move to approve with the staff recommendation with striking number 1.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the subdivision application?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. The second portion of that is the planned unit development application, which has been recommended for approval. I need a motion with some findings of fact.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation, adopting findings of facts A, B, C, and D.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Do we
Aye.
need to strike
Sorry.
condition number 1?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, it was part of
Yes.
that.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, it was. Thank you.
I had that marked on my thing, too. I'm sorry about that.
Was that Nick's motion? Yes. Did he amend it?
Mr. Amber, would you amend your motion?
Yes, I'll amend my motion.
That amended motion seconded?
Second.
All in favor of any discussion on the motion as amended? All in favor of passing that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Number 4, which is 6101 and 6301 Greylock Road and Hillcrest Road. We will take the subdivision portion first. It has been recommended for tentative approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. We will move to the land unit development phase, which has also been recommended for approval, needing findings of fact.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendations with findings of fact A, B, and D, amending the conditions to remove number 3 and to include a requirement for traffic engineering approval on number 7 with regard to parking for the self-storage facility.
Second.
Properly, I'm sorry?
Where does that really get us? And I asked Mary Beth that question. I mean, she's already suggested in her report that it be moved. The developer saying is, I mean, I kind of took the developer saying, you know, this is the only place, we can't change our building. So, you know, typically, not typically, very frequently, we say subject to the traffic engineer's comments or working it out in the future, but what other options are there? I think it's great that since there's no parking required, that he's including it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what else is there to do, Mary Beth, other than accept this or not have any parking?
I think I'll be accepting this, and it's just a matter of looking at the things about where the sign's placed or things like that to make it appear as though it's more of a parking lot and not so much a drive aisle.
And I think if I could add, if we talk about it as a PUD, we can up the landscaping requirements. We can talk about hours of operation. We can talk about the height of the sign. And this might be an opportunity on that parking that, like I said, it's a road for all intents and purposes, certain times of the day. And they really needs to stand out that it's got people crossing it in some fashion that they pay attention. So is this where we can add those requirements on a PUD and talk about that additional parking that,
Sure.
you know, traffic
You
engineering?
talk about the sign, landscaping?
Yeah, so I'll ask the staff to help us on that.
You can stipulate the style of the sign, the maximum height of the sign for each lot. In terms of landscaping, it's site plan, PUD's site plan specific, so what isn't hardscaped as shown on this plan, you can stipulate is green space. Yes, you can definitely stipulate the hours of operation as well. What other information?
The building materials for what fronts onto Greylock, especially for the big storage unit, the building. It's not a unit, it's a building.
You could
Either masonry or and the coloring of it too. That's a concern that,
Okay, I will say this, you could stipulate, you know, that there be a masonry facade facing Greylock Road. Coloring outside of the historic district gets a little dicey in terms of, in the historic districts, you usually have a palette, you know, Sherman Williams, you know.
could we say no Dago glow type coloring, like bright
No.
orange or lime? Because that's,
How about no fluorescent colors?
yeah, that would be good.
I mean, does this
I mean,
this body doesn't have the authority to pick and choose colors and what color blinds and curtains and all that stuff. I think we're stepping outside of our
No,
authority.
I think on a storage unit this big, it's a big, and it sits up.
I think in a PUD, we have the right to discuss building materials. The developer said it was going to be stucco
They-
and brick.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Margaret said, outside the historic district, I don't think we've ever addressed color. And I know where you're coming from. I hate those big orange buildings, but I'm not sure we have the legal right in a PUD to limit the color. We never have.
Yeah, we actually did, but working on that one. Across the street, we did. We got it screened, and anything that fronted Greylock, they could not use a day glow. I call it a day glow color, and I can't seem to find that paperwork.
So, Madam Chair, so I have a motion and a second right now, but I would amend it to include a requirement for monument-style signs on the site and masonry and stucco facades on Greylock. Counselor, was there a particular set of hours that you were looking to?
Well, as far as the car wash, it was 7 to 7 p.m. every day but Sunday. So I think that could be part of the PUD for the hours of
Okay.
operation.
And I would also include a restriction that the hours for the car wash would be restricted to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
And what about, I don't think we can talk so much about the materials on the car wash, because, you know, that's a building that has although they can make those have masonry or look a little more than a pop-up type Butler building.
Well, you could do that. I understand what you're saying, because you're still going to have a facade beyond the roll-up door or the bay.
Right, yeah. And then what about a hedging in front of anything that fronts onto Greylock?
Within the
For
ordinance.
the car wash. I'm not so worried, because if they're gonna have a parking area that kind of stands out, nice monument sign for that side, that's gonna get the attention. The other thing is, how do we screen a car wash as best we can under PUD condition?
If you're going to have a monument sign, which is going to be, did you put a maximum size on it? 8 feet?
I didn't include a maximum size.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Never mind.
But
But
I just,
should have.
Madam Chair, I'd like to say, I have to leave for a meeting in 2 minutes, and I'm not amending my motion anymore.
Okay. Well, that's, all right.
If I may point out, there's screening requirements in the ordinance for a car wash in B3. They're automatic.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hamburger. That has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of Mr. Anderson's motion as amended,
Aye.
please say aye.
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 All opposed to Mr. Anderson's motion? That motion passes as amended. Thank
I
you
hope
very
y'all got all
much.
those details written down. I hope y'all have all those written down.
I wrote them all down.
I'll remind them.
Further business without a quorum, Mr. Anderson, can you give me 30 seconds? Yes, ma'am. We need to adopt the 21-22 meeting and deadline schedule. I move we adopt the meeting as, the schedule as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain, because I
Thank you
won't
so
be
much.
here for it.
Ms. Pappas, we need to have a quick conversation on 116 Myrtlewood Lane.
I'm sorry, it's administrative. There was a computer failure. Anyway, there was a subdivision the commission approved back in May. It stipulated a 25-foot setback along the side street because that was what the applicant proposed. The applicant now is wanting to amend that to a 20-foot setback along the side street, which is what the zoning ordinance allows. But as it was a stipulated condition, I need the commission's approval to grant that 20-foot setback on the final plat along the side street.
What item exactly was that? Can we have more details?
This was, hold on, because my,
It was on Myrtle Wood. Steve shared an application
Oh,
on
were
Myrtle
there
Wood.
already? Yeah.
where they
That little
did
private-
not
it's a little private
receive,
drive.
sorry, this is actually quicker. Here.
Do we have residents that came down that?
They had requested a front setback variance. That variance was denied. Because the variance was denied and they cannot build closer to Myrtlewood as they had proposed, they are asking to have a 20-foot setback along this side street here. The ordinance allows it. They are proposing to build in compliance with the setbacks. It's simply that when they submitted the plat to the Planning Commission, they showed that 20-foot setback along the side street.
So we're just being asked to amend the side setback, not the front setback.
That is correct.
It's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
Properly
Thank you.
moved and seconded. All in favor of
Aye.
reducing
Aye.
that setback?
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you to those of y'all who attended today's meeting, especially the 2 summer interns. I hope y'all learned a lot. We have several more scheduled through the summer. If you want to come to some of those, you might get the opportunity to see some fireworks. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pappas. See y'all in a couple of weeks. This meeting is adjourned. I'm sorry.
Okay.